This is exactly what we needed. Is we have a couple of huge updates surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs, and one including Chris Tanev ahead of the big game coming up. But we also have some interesting comments made from both Matthew Knies and Brandon Carlo ahead of the game against the Panthers. And the comments are very interesting. So stay tuned for all that in this episode, because we have a lot to go over today. But before we get into it, we have a very proud announcement to make. We are super excited to announce that we are kicking off a March Madness bracket for the channel. We've partnered with the Hot Takes app and other digest channels for this event. It is completely free to sign up. Just download the Hot Takes app, click the March Madness banner at the top, and under groups select the digest media pool. This is really exciting as there is over $35,000 in prizes to be won. And since there's a much smaller pool of people participating, there's a real chance of winning big.
Yeah, so check out the link below in the comments or the description, or scan the QR code on your screen right now to download the app, and make sure to use promo code DIGEST. It is cap sensitive, so be sure to use DIGEST in all caps to get exclusive perks when signing up. The main event round starts on March 16th, and if you have any trouble signing in, there is an email in the description. You can reach out to us and we'll help you get signed in. And thank you again to the Hot Takes app for partnering with us on this event.
Yeah, so make sure to check them out in the pinned comment and the description down below as well. And get in there because it starts on March 16th, the first bit there. So make sure to go down, check it out. And it's going to be a fun community event. And in our post-game streams, we're going to be talking to you guys about it. So make sure to join that and use code DIGEST in all caps. And get your friends and family to all join in because it starts very, very soon. But ladies and gentlemen, a lot to go over today. Now, Darius, we know the Leafs have a huge game tomorrow. It almost feels like not a playoff game necessarily because it is a regular season game. But the atmosphere around Leafs land, Leafs Twitter, Leafs Nation, all these different things are... This game means a lot for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we have some more updates. I want to start with the Chris Tanev one. We obviously covered it in the video earlier today, but there's a couple of other updates surrounding him and also one surrounding Chris himself. So in case you missed the video earlier, check it out after this one. But again, in case you missed it, Berube said that Tanev is close. He's getting better. He's improving every day, and the status versus the Panthers tomorrow is day to day. But we have a couple other updates surrounding that. And Chris Tanev actually spoke out himself for the first time since, in a few days here and said he's feeling good, progressing day by day on sort of the timeline that was given to us, just trying to get better every day. Dealt with this type of injury before. I've been hurt a lot, and he smiled, so we're going to leave it at that. So, Darius, before we get into some of the other updates here, Chris Tanev actually spoke out, and this is a good sign. He said he's feeling good. He said he's progressing day by day on the timeline that was given to us, which... Not exactly sure which timeline he's talking about here, because as far as we're aware, the timeline has been kind of thrown around between day to day for a pretty long time, and that the Tanev is just this, or the timeline is just this for Tanev that we don't really know yet. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, day to day for the Leafs, and he's been day to day for the last week and a half at this point. So day to day for the Leafs this season is, take your pick, right? Throw a dart at the dartboard at this point. But from what he said today, I'm feeling very optimistic about his return, and maybe not tomorrow. And I feel like, him returning tomorrow, it's going to be a physical game. Like, both teams need to win this game. They desperately need to win this game. So I'm not too sure he makes it into the lineup tomorrow. That being said, I am hopeful with all the language being used today that, he could return either tomorrow or Saturday. And the fact that he came out and said, this is an injury I've dealt with before, and that he's feeling good and he just wants to feel like, himself again, 100%, get back up to speed. I feel like that's a really good thing, and he could be nearing a return very soon. So all the language that's being used, I try to read between the lines sometimes, especially when it comes to the Leafs and their injuries specifically this year. But it's looking like everything's pointing towards him returning very soon, which we thought at first, he was going to play the second game, like as soon as obviously the next game after he got injured. That clearly has not happened, but it looks like he is nearing a return very shortly.
Yeah, this is it happened multiple times this season with Austin Matthews, a bunch of different players. We think they're going to come back after the day-to-day. But again, I guess the timeline that was given to Chris Tanev was different than the public timeline, which is just day to day. We're hoping he's going to play the game after he got injured, and then from there. But again, it's going to be interesting. And Berube, also, you think back to March 9th when he said he's not where he wants to be. We got to be careful. It's unfortunate because we do miss him. So this was on March 9th. At least now, a few days later, a lot more encouraging signs for Chris Tanev, and pretty big news, him finally speaking out, because he's been pretty quiet on that front regarding the actual player himself. So let us know down below what your thoughts are, because this one is, quite frankly, like we've been mentioning in the videos and the streams, he is the most important player to get back right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So let us know down below what your thoughts are. But a few other things to go over today, as well as a couple of other updates ahead of the game here. And I want to speak out on this one, or I guess talk about Matthew Knies speaking out on this one. It was on the trade deadline period. He says that it was a little nerve-wracking and that he wanted to stay here and be a part of this group, but I tried not to focus on it. It's out of my control, so I let them handle their business. And fortunately, I'm still here and just excited. And he's obviously talking specifically about the talks between him being thrown in a trade with Mikko Rantanen, which the Leafs never actually did. They didn't offer, at least from what we know and our public knowledge, of Matthew Knies. However, it is good, and this is very encouraging because let's not forget he needs a contract after this season as well. There's a lot of different players who need contracts, and for him to say he wants to be here and that he was nervous that they were going to trade him out probably lends a pretty good sign to what his future in Toronto is.
I like the quote. Like anyone who comes out and says, I want to be here and I'm glad that I didn't get traded is all right in my books as a Leafs fan, right? When you look at this and you're like, okay, this is a guy who plays hard for the team and actually wants to be here and win here. That's great, right? I'd love to see that stuff. So that, first of all, the quote is fantastic. And from our knowledge too, like he was never actually put in a trade. That was a rumor that was out on Thursday, on Friday as well. As far as we know, it was Mitch Marner, and then the Leafs tried to put another package together when Mitch Marner said no for the trade, and they tried to package together Easton Cow and Fraser Minton and a 2 first-round picks, to our knowledge, to trade for Mikko Rantanen. They did not accept that. So there was a rumor that Matthew Knies was included. I don't know if that's true, right? I don't know if that actually happened, but obviously he has a cell phone. All these guys have cell phones, so I mean, like, he's seen things online. I'm sure he was seeing the rumors, so, you know, I'm sure that was pressing him a little bit that day, but it's nice that he didn't get traded. I mean, a lot of people are calling him an untouchable. At this point, I mean, he's going to score 30 goals, right? Like he's looking like he's going to be a dominant player, a dominant power forward in this league, like a new age power forward. So I'm really glad they did not give up on him, even though it was a rumor, and I'm glad that they're keeping him. And he's going to get himself a nice contract this summer. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. It could be a bridge, but if I was them, try to lock him up to maybe 7x7 or something, 8x7, something like that. So it's just going to age fantastic as the salary cap goes up.
Yeah, and obviously that'll be a big talking point, even though Mitch Marner will take over the headlines. And Mikko Rantanen, the Leafs were on one of his 4 teams he would have gotten extended, or would have extended with if he got traded to. So maybe there he was dangled in those talks, and he's off to a hot start. Has as many goals in 2 games with the Stars as he had in 13 games with the Hurricanes. So it's going to be an interesting one surrounding him, but I'm happy we can put those talks to rest now. And speaking of the trade deadline, Brandon Carlo came out and had his impression after day 1 in Toronto, because let's not forget today is the first day that they practice in Toronto. And of course, now Brandon Carlo was still living in Boston. He had to move his family over, and I believe he went to Boston after the last Leafs game against Utah. Now he's fully in Toronto. He said, Toronto is a beast, one of the great hockey cities, original 6. Being on the opposite side of things, I feel like I've learned a lot about this organization. The environment is really exciting. Toronto is a beast. And of course, like I said, playing in the playoffs, we know Brandon Carlo. We're familiar with him as a player, and of course, playing against him in the playoffs a bunch of different times last season, playing the Bruins, all these different things, playing Brandon Carlo last year in the playoffs. So it's interesting because you love to see that. And quite frankly, he's under contract now for a couple more years. So this year, next year, he's going to be a staple in this blue line. I know there's been a lot of discourse about how he hasn't played great so far. Now that he's finally home, his life is starting to settle, because that's, the human side of, hockey isn't talked about as much, especially when it comes to trades. I think he's going to be fantastic, similar to Scott Laughton as well, which is going to be pretty exciting. So it is a very, very good comment from, of course, Brandon Carlo.
A lot of people were making, this into a big thing over the last couple of days. We had a video about this yesterday about how the new guys aren't performing well. First of all, it's 2 games. And second of all, specifically with Brandon Carlo, he's from, I believe, Colorado. So his family was actually there for his first game on Saturday. And on top of it, there was a story that came out that he was talking about how, his wife stayed behind in Boston to pack up the house, and his mom was flying back to help pack up the house. And, apparently after the game in Utah, he flew back to Boston to help pack up the house to move them to Toronto, which they're doing right now. And obviously he's here for his first practice to actually get some reps in at home. They have a bit of a homestand. Give them at least 5 games here, the new guys, to kind of get acclimated to not just the system, but the city. This guy is moving to Toronto, right? So you have to consider the human aspect. And we talk a lot about certain guys struggling like Morgan Riley. There's a human aspect to that too, right? So, if we're talking about that, we got to talk about this. So I'm looking for still within 5 games, right? I'm going to give them 5 games to see what they're giving the team. And I still have very high hopes for both him and Scott Laughton. I think Brandon Carlo is going to be an amazing player for this team. He just keeps it simple. He's a great big right shot defenseman. I mean, it absolutely better work out, first of all, but I think it is going to work out, and give them a few more games to get acclimated. I'm looking for a big game tomorrow. They're settled in at home now. Like, it's a big one, so I'm excited to see some fireworks.
Yeah, Laughton, of course, also growing up as a Leafs fan, as you mentioned in previous videos, and some very interesting things there. A couple other notes before we wrap up. Greg Berube spoke out about Chris Tanev's impact this season, comparing him to Chris Pronger, one of the obviously a Hall of Famer, great defenseman in his own right. It just goes to illustrate how important Tanev is. One other thing I want to touch on that is probably one of the last times we'll talk about Fraser Minton being traded, unless he goes out and turns into a fantastic, which he probably will be, third line center in the NHL. But you can see this here, Matthew Knies, and what it was like seeing good friend Fraser Minton go at the deadline. He said, I was a little bit upset. Obviously, he was around here as a younger guy, and I got to know him pretty well. Go down a little bit. As for the trade deadline, it was a little nerve-wracking, similar to what he said. So a lot of these players lost some of their friends, all those things. Right now, the focus is on this game tomorrow. That's what everybody is talking about. And it's one of the biggest games that, the Leafs it is probably going to end up being every game against the Panthers, one of the biggest games of this season, because you have a chance now with them losing to the Bruins yesterday and, of course, Tampa Bay losing to make up some ground here, especially with the Leafs having a game in hand. So let us know down below what your thoughts are. Also, make sure to check out the Hot Takes app in the description and make sure to sign up for that using code DIGEST in all caps. See you guys later.